The Arizona Coyotes have one of the most in-demand names in trade talks. We'll talk about Jakob Chycrun and all things Coyotes with Robyn Leano of Locked On Coyotes coming up next on the Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome back to the Locked On NHL podcast Monday edition. Thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Right now, it's my pleasure to welcome back to the show Robyn Leano, the co-host of Locked On Arizona Coyotes. And Robyn, how you doing? Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. It's good. It's pretty good. I think had to recover over the weekend, but things are better.
Okay, glad to hear that. And look, the Coyotes seem to have stabilized a little bit after that very rough start to the season. I mean, they had won 2 out of 3 before this recent home and home with the Colorado Avalanche. Let's start with this. What has been the sort of helping them stabilize things a little bit, let's say, over the last 5 or 10 games?
I think it's a mix of a lot of different things. One, it's finding reliable goaltending, and I think that's been a thing for the Arizona Coyotes for over the last couple of years. Obviously, you saw them when Darcy Kuemper and Antti Raanta were on their team, and now in this case, it's Scott Wedgwood and Karel Vejmelka. They've been a massive part to this Coyotes team. Obviously, you saw Vejmelka, I think, he's had 3 games of over 45 saves this season, which is unbelievable. And then I think the other thing, too, is I think the team overall is just stabilizing and finding a chemistry together, because this was a completely new team. It's a team that had, for the most part, hadn't skated with each other at all, because they completely blew up over the offseason and just all right, we're starting 100% fresh.
All right, so sort of getting more comfortable with each other, learning the system. A lot of trade rumors going around with Chycrun. We know that he demanded a trade. What are the Coyotes asking for him, and do you hear any rumors about what may be imminent and coming down the tracks right now?
So I don't hear anything concrete yet, but I do know that what the Coyotes are pretty much saying is they don't have a set asking price right now, but they're just listening. They're just seeing what is the value? What do these teams value Jakob Chycrun as? And it seems that I've been getting some proposals from other hosts who's oh, what about 2023 first round plus these players? And that's roughly where it is. Getting a high level draft pick, roster players, and also a prospect. So we're talking a future potential Norris caliber defenseman here. Right now, his season isn't his year. It hasn't been his year so far this season, but we've seen what he's capable of.
What is his health status right now, and how does he look long term? Because obviously, like you mentioned, he hasn't been off to a great start this year. Minus 29 through 26 games. How has he been playing, and how is his health?
He started picking things up after the start of the season again. He was terrible to the start. He finally got his first goal. I think it was either late November or early December. But it's still been slow. I think because he's trying to find who he pairs well with. Is he going to be pairing well with Lyubushkin better? Does he pair well with Anton Strawman? Who is his number one pairing? Because he lost his number one pairing last season, after last season. So health wise though, I think last I checked though, he was day to day with I believe it was a lower body injury. I do not know any timetable when he was going to return. I do know at the beginning of last week he was put into the COVID protocol. So we don't know anything else much past that.
And just to give our listeners an idea, so many people hear his name in trade rumors. What does he give to a team? You say he has Norris Trophy potential. What does he add to a lineup, especially if he's put into a team that has a little bit more talent around him than Arizona does right now?
I mean, you've been able to see it in the last, like last season, for example. Despite how bad the Coyotes were even then, he was a I mean, he was a defenseman that was capable of scoring goals. He's a puck moving offensive defenseman who can really find find the net, get him paired alongside a good defensive defenseman, and it works well for him. Last year, I believe he was the highest, like he had the most goals among NHL defensemen, if I'm not mistaken. So he was up there. Um, it just shows what he's capable of. Again, this year isn't it's like a misstep of this year. It's completely different than what we're used to, but he's still playing off his value.
Wanted to ask you about Clayton Keller playing so well for the Coyotes right now, and maybe because Arizona is struggling a bit, not getting a lot of attention from the national media. Talk to me about this guy who's leading the team in scoring and really seems to be coming on as a leader as well.
Yeah, that's one of the big things I was thinking about all season long is he was going to come out as a leader. And Clayton Keller definitely is one of those people. And I think he knows this team is rebuilding and he knows that he's with this team long term. I believe he's locked up through, 6-7 years, going down. So he's got a long time with this team. So he's making sure he gets that commitment. And he's buying into the new wave that Andre Tourné has set forth by the team, and he's delivered. And I think he has worked alongside other players too. If you look on the defensive side, I think even with Shane Gostisbehere, who's literally just right behind him in points, I think they work well together as teammates, even though one's offense, one defense. But it just shows that they like each other, and I think when he finds a good pairing and a good line mates, it works well for him.
Give Coyotes fans another reason for hope. Give me a couple of players who, despite this being a rough season, have emerged as pieces this team can hold on to and build around.
There's a lot of players. I mean, the Coyotes has been a lot of injured teams, so they've called up a lot of guys from the Tucson Roadrunners. And on the Coyotes podcast, we've actually talked about a couple guys who got called up and who are making big impacts. Barrett Hayton is one of them. He got called up and he has made a huge impact, and I don't think he's going to get sent down anytime soon. JJ Mosier just got called up not too long ago, I think earlier this month, and he's already made a big impact to the point where it's almost to the point where the Coyotes can't send him down, even though he probably is better served in Tucson. But it just shows you what the future of this Coyotes team is capable of. It's going to be better. Right now, it's not still good, but these players, these young players who are, in their early 20s, maybe even the late teens, they're going to be the future of the franchise, and that's what they're building around.
One last question about the arena situation. I know it's more or less settled for this year, but any new news on the future of the Coyotes and where they'll be next season?
There's still a lot of unknowns about that. It almost seems one thing's for sure is Gila River Arena is almost out of the question. So they're just waiting on Tempe. Last I checked, from the last week or two, that it was actually almost hanging in the balance, where a couple undecided city council members were leaning towards no on accepting the proposal. And that would be just enough to reject the proposal. There's still months ahead, so they still have a lot of discussion. They had to discuss with ownership, and a lot of it is behind closed doors, so we don't really know what's going on. But at this time, it's hard to tell, I think. But Coyotes fans should still be optimistic and maybe even voice their support, because city council meetings are public.
Well said. Well said. Robyn, why don't you let our listeners and our viewers know where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find the podcast or anywhere you get your podcast. We're also on YouTube at the Locked On Coyotes podcast, and Facebook as well. But you can find me personally on social media at Robyn_Leano. It is at Robyn with a Y _Leano. And that's where you can find me.
All right, Robyn, always a pleasure to have you here, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Gil.